Someone cancels plans, and you feel relieved. A friend takes a few hours to reply, and your mind has already written 3 different explanations for why. You're not anxious. You're just used to not being sure if you matter. That's what happens when you grow up and no one really checked on you. Not in the way that counts. People assume that kind of childhood produces obvious damage. Tantrums, rebellion, obvious pain. It doesn't always look like that. Sometimes it looks like the most self-sufficient person in the room. The one who never asks for help. The one who reads everyone around them but shares almost nothing in return. It's not strength, it's a pattern. And patterns have origins. There are specific behaviors that show up, quietly, consistently, in people who were ignored as children. And once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them. Because sometimes the child who was ignored doesn't grow up looking broken. Sometimes they grow up looking completely fine. There's a particular kind of person who grew up and turned out fine. Functional, capable, calm in a crisis. The kind of person others describe as so put together. And from the outside, that description is accurate. But there's a version of childhood that doesn't leave visible marks. No obvious trauma. No dramatic story. Just years of quiet. Of needs going unmet. Questions going unanswered. Feelings going unnoticed. The damage didn't disappear. It went inward. And then it became a personality. These are 7 patterns that show up, consistently, specifically, in people who grew up being ignored. Point 1. They overthink small changes in people's behavior. A friend replies with less warmth than usual. A colleague skips the greeting they normally give. Someone's tone shifts by a fraction. Most people don't clock that. You do. And once you clock it, the processing begins. Was it something you said? Are they pulling away? Is something wrong that you caused without knowing? From the outside, this looks like anxiety, insecurity, overthinking. But it has an origin. When you grew up around people who were emotionally unpredictable or simply absent, reading microsignals wasn't a quirk. It was how you stayed safe. You learned to track shifts in atmosphere the way a weather forecaster tracks pressure. Because sudden changes had consequences, and no one warned you they were coming. The hypervigilance didn't stay in childhood. It just relocated. Point 2. They become highly independent, but secretly crave care. They handle everything themselves. Broken things, difficult decisions, emotional weight. All of it managed alone. And they're good at it. Impressively good. So people assume they prefer it that way. They don't, always. What actually happened is simpler and harder. They asked for help and nothing came. Not once dramatically, but consistently, quietly, over years. So the asking stopped. Not because the need disappeared, because the need stopped feeling like something worth expressing. The independence is real. So is the ache underneath it. The one that surfaces when someone else is taken care of without asking, and there's a flicker of something that feels almost like grief. That's not a personality preference. That's an adaptation. Point 3. They notice everyone's mood, but hide their own. They walk into a room and immediately know who's tense, who's distracted, who's performing fine but isn't. They rarely announce what they're feeling. This looks like introversion. Being a good listener, emotional maturity even. It's actually 2 things happening at once, and they develop together. Reading others became necessary early because other people's moods determine the emotional temperature of the environment. And hiding your own became necessary too, because expressing what you felt either changed nothing or made things worse. So the skill developed in both directions simultaneously. Outward attunement, inward concealment. You learn to be fluent in everyone else's emotional language while becoming a stranger to your own. Point 4. They fear being a burden. Notice how they ask for things. There's usually a pre-apology, a built-in disclaimer. This is probably too much to ask, but... Or the request framed as optional before anyone's had a chance to respond. Or no request at all, just quietly managing alone until it becomes a crisis. People read this as politeness, being low maintenance, considerate. It's actually a conclusion, one a child drew from real evidence. When your needs were met with absence or impatience or nothing at all, you didn't conclude that the people around you were failing you. Children rarely do. You concluded that the need itself was the problem, that wanting things was an imposition, that you were, in some hard-to-name way, too much. That conclusion became a reflex, and reflexes don't wait for logic before they fire. Point 5. They struggle to believe love is safe. Someone is genuinely kind to them, consistently, without agenda, and instead of relaxing into it, they wait. They wait for the shift. For the moment the warmth gets withdrawn, the tone changes, the closeness turns out to have conditions. They don't always know they're waiting, but the guard doesn't fully come down. From the outside, this looks like emotional unavailability, trust issues, keeping people at arm's length. Psychologically, it makes complete sense. When the first people who were supposed to be constant weren't, when love felt like something that existed and then simply stopped, the nervous system drew a conclusion about what closeness means. Not safety, exposure, something that can disappear. Receiving love becomes its own kind of tension, because the only question that feels relevant is, when does this end? Point 6. They overachieve or completely shut down. Two roads, same origin. Some people who grew up ignored decided, not consciously, not in words, that they would become impossible to overlook. They worked harder, achieved more, made themselves undeniable. If you couldn't be seen for who you were, you could at least be seen for what you produced. Others went the opposite direction, withdrew, stopped trying, decided that effort and outcome weren't connected in any reliable way. From the outside, the first group looks driven. The second looks unmotivated. Neither description touches what's actually happening. Both groups are exhausted. Both responses are expensive to maintain. And neither one, no matter how long it runs, fills the original gap. Because the original gap was never about achievement. It was about being noticed. Just that. Just seen. The two roads look different. They lead to the same quiet ache. Point 7. They leave before they can be left. This is the one that costs the most. A relationship gets close, genuinely close, the kind of closeness that feels real. And something shifts. They pull back, create distance, find a reason the other person isn't right, or that the timing is wrong, or that things were better before they got this serious. Sometimes they leave outright. Sometimes they just make themselves a little harder to reach. From the outside, commitment issues, emotional coldness, self-sabotage. From the inside, there's a logic that doesn't need language. You already know how it feels to be left. You already know what it means when someone who was supposed to stay doesn't. And somewhere, not in thought, but in reflex, the decision gets made. Leave first. End it before it ends you. Don't let it reach the part where you're the one who gets abandoned. It's not fear of love. It's fear of the moment love goes quiet. And they've survived that moment before. Look at these 7 patterns together. Hypervigilance, performed independence, emotional concealment, the fear of needing things, the inability to fully trust warmth, the exhausting binary of overachieving and shutting down, the preemptive exit. None of these are random. None of them are flaws without context. They are a system, built carefully by someone very young who needed to survive an environment where being seen wasn't guaranteed. Every pattern had a function. Every habit was a solution to a problem that was real at the time. The child who was ignored didn't fall apart. They adapted. And the person they became is still running that system, long after the original environment is gone. That's not weakness. That's just what survival looks like when no one names it.